Okay, Bill Gates' natal chart is up on saint or sinner. You decide. Let's throw away all the misinformation we get from mainstream media and the large amounts of fake news social media spews out. To strip William Henry Gates III, Bill Gates' public persona off, to peek behind the veil, so to speak, to see the actual universal forces at play within his natal chart, his soul's blueprint, to see the forces that shaped him and the forces that still motivate him today. All this will be through the lens of precise metaphysical astrology. If you have any questions about my interpretations, please feel free to check out my Metaphysical Astrology Explained playlist. For now, just be aware that we use the sidereal placements, which are the actual placements of celestial bodies, not the outdated or approximate places still used by most mainstream Western tropical astrologers. Hence, Bill Gates' sun is in Virgo, not Scorpio, as you might have seen in some tropical astrology interpretations. Again, any questions, check out the Metaphysical Astrology playlist when you have a chance. Okay, now back to Bill Gates. I'll start with the placement of all the celestial bodies. Then we'll go further by interpreting the interplay of all the energies and discuss how they express themselves constructively or destructively, or a combination of both. Bill Gates' ascendant is in early Sagittarius. The Sagittarius actually colors the entire energy of Gates' entire first house, showing us that Gates has desired to project someone who's had a global perspective, even since a very young age. We see Charlico here near Estrella. This is making Gates present himself to others as someone who has created a healing place for the rest of humanity, someone who presents themselves as better, of a higher realm than the rest of humanity. Then we see Lilith conjunct Aphrodite. There is definitely a darkness in his love, the love that he projects he has for others. The last object in Sag in the first is Ceres. Bill, or William Henry Gates III, wants to appear the supportive parent of the rest of the globe. In truth, with all of these energies combined, he's definitely in the first house, he's definitely more concerned with fulfilling his own needs and desires than others. He simply wants to project this persona to the rest of humanity. The second house starts at 0 degrees Capricorn with Chiron under the influence of the stars of Aquila here, Altair. If Gates could access the higher expression of this energy, it would be enlightened. He would be driven by lessons learned from fighting to achieve what he desired in his first house. However, being on the cusp between the first and the second, it is doubtful he has learned those lessons in this lifetime. But then again, people can surprise us. Then with Floss in early Cap, this shows us that Gates has always been fated to desire to accumulate many material possessions. All of the influence of Capricorn is in the second house. After Floss fate, Capricorn is not impeded by any other forces, showing that Gates had the ability to build a solid, a lasting business that supports all of his physical and material pleasures with less impediment or less blockages than most people would have to go through. Hence his success at such a young age. The second house ends in the energy of Aquarius, which the lower energy, the lower expression of Aquarius is the internet, the World Wide Web, and any form of communication via computers. That would include computer languages, showing Gates was fated to develop one, and that it will stand the test of time and provide him with material wealth and comfort. Aquarius continues into the third house, showing Gates was interested in tech from a very young age, that he learned best from his interaction with technology and was inspired to continue to do so. With Pisces at the end of the third, it shows that Gates was more of a dreamer than an actual academic in his early years. Pisces continues to start the fourth house in his chart, and we see his moon with a tight conjunction to chaos retrograde. This is Bill Gates' emotional roots. This is not good. It shows his childhood home was probably emotionally chaotic to the point that it was destabilizing for him. And with Eris retrograde nearby, this shows that the house that Gates grew up in was not harmonic. In fact, it was probably highly competitive. Even more concerning is seeing Sedna retrograde late in the fourth house. This would have more to do with Bill at a later stage of his life, as how he is as a nurturer himself with, his children or young people. Being late in Pisces as well, with Sedna, if this was in its lowest expression, it could show abuse of young children or young women. In its highest expression, it would show a mentor of sorts. However, with his moon conjunct chaos with Eris, the higher expression is not really supported here. We'll discuss this further when we get to the interplay of all the different energetic aspects within the chart. Just a couple degrees further, and we see Bill Gates' IC on the cusp of the fourth and the fifth house, as well as the cusp of between Pisces and Aries. So this is kind of significant. Here we see his deep and disturbed emotional roots drive his passion and ego. He is driven by a need to be first, number one, numero uno, cultivated, and this was cultivated in his childhood home. He feels he needs to be driven to be number one, to be loved. All of the influence of Aries is in Bill's fifth house. Aries is with Mars, that's fight. It's all about me, my ego, fighting to survive, killing off anyone who's in your way, that kind of energy. So that is all in his fifth house of his deepest passions. And then with Varuna retrograde, dead center, Gate would have the energy of someone who harbors a deep desire, a passion to create actually a new world order. And then with Nessus here retrograde at the last degrees of Aries, this is showing that Bill Gates's intentions are hidden deep within and are not good for others. The fifth house energy switches to Taurus. However, Varuna is below the ecliptic in the stars of Cetus, a constellation I've spoken of previously in other videos. It's the sea monster. Here we see Cetus is also activated by Sedna and by Eris. So all of these are in Cetus. A sea monster is indicative of spiritual or emotional issues, and these are influencing his deepest passions. In fact, with Fortuna here, and here it's actually showing when he takes the low road, not the high road, when he behaves and acts in ways to create what he needs to fulfill his physical pleasures and desires. He's actually, throughout his life, been rewarded for that. Now, of course, the universe works in mysterious ways. So ultimately, this will lead to some sort of lesson he needs to learn in this life. As we enter Gates' sixth house, we see his south node. It is also in Taurus. This is showing that Gates worked very, very hard as a young man to perfect his personal skills and abilities to have the skills to make and attain what he felt could be his contribution to be of service, what he believed as a young man as how he could be of service later. The sixth house ends with the energy of Gemini, showing that the skills Gates honed in his youth did help provide communication skills and services to others. But now we enter the seventh house, still in Gemini, but we see Orcus. It could be that Gates has been in intolerant partnerships, or he could be an intolerant partner, malicious or punishing, especially of any partner or business partner that Gates felt broke a pledge or promise or a contract of any kind. At the end of the seventh, the energy changes to Cancer with Maki Maki showing that partnerships at the very end of his life could be more nurturing because of lessons learned from prior life experiences. Now, as we enter the 8th house, we are still under Cancer's influence, which is now housing Amor with Uranus. The most intimate relationship or love that Gate had nurtured above all others, especially as a young man, was his love for technology. This is especially true in his early years. It is almost sad to see his vertex here at the end of Cancer unactivated by any other influences in his chart. To say he had been a geek or socially awkward would have been an understatement. This could also show that he didn't have an intimate relationship with another adult until he met the mother of his children or someone like his mother. The 8th house energy changes midway to Leo. At the very end of the 8th, Leo is also flavored by the combined energies of Haumea, Jupiter, Pluto, and a Regulus stellium. This is showing us that later in life, Gates finds a rejuvenating, expansive, or transformative intimacy that he is very passionate about, that makes him feel young and joyful again, which makes him feel more alive. The power is so strong here, and with Pluto, could also be a dark expression. Haumea, her mythology, actually had sex with her own children to make herself feel young again. I'm not insinuating anything here. I'm just interpreting the energies in this natal chart. So please don't get upset with me. Oh, and then we see that the stellium is very close to the energy of Nemesis in Leo at the start of the 9th house. This would speak more to Gates' early philosophy of humanity of a whole, which could harken back here to the 1st house. It shows that he did not have a very positive view. I believe he was bullied as a child. That could have created this type of an outlook. But with Leo, this early bullying could have been in part what drove Gates to believe, especially with Leo and what's going on here with the 5th house. This could be also in part what drove Gates to believe he wanted to be seen as superior king in comparison to others, that he should someday control or be in charge of people, especially those that he felt were his intellectual inferiors. Wasn't it Gates that said something like, there was a quote, be careful, don't bully nerds. Someday you'll most likely be working for one. And I guess he was probably referring to himself. One day you might be working for me, so be careful, right? I might have missed a word or two there, but that was the essence of his quote. If I find a pic, I'll put it up here. Anyway, the 9th house ends in Virgo energy with Vesta at the very top of Gates' chart. People from afar and all around have seen Gates almost as a Mother Teresa figure throughout the years. Now, look at the amount of energy influencing the 10th and the 11th house at his chart. Okay, so we got to unpack this. All right. Actually, the 10th house is only influenced by the stars of one constellation, Virgo, which is perfectionism and communication. Interesting, right? So first we have Eris, and then we have Mars, Quaoar, and Mercury in the 10th. So Gates is known to all by to love the fight, to manifest his visions, to perfect them, to ensure their survival, especially in the realms of language and communication of a higher order, which would coincide with, well, of course, Microsoft, but also his early development of software. Then Ixion shows his mastery, dominance of this area in the market, was sometimes seen as taking advantage of the competition. Achilles near Cupido will show that a love will be his Achilles heel. And this is followed by a conjunction between Neptune, an exact conjunction, and Deianira near his midheaven. So on the cusp of the 11th. All right. So this is showing that this love could be a fantasy or a dream or a vision, It could also abuse others through the guise of humanitarian pursuits. Okay, just 3 more degrees and we are finally at his sun, which is in Virgo in the 11th. So he's definitely been seen as a humanitarian for a good part of his life, especially with his midheaven very close to the sun. So also a focus almost on the cusp between the 10th and the 11th. So that's really interesting. And of course, this is all in Virgo, which, as we said before, which has to do with perfecting oneself, one's skills, and communications of a higher order. The 11th house energy changes to Libra, justice, with Venus at home in Libra, also about balance and justice, near an exact conjunction between Saturn and Hygieia. This shows the writing of a harsh humanitarian health project, which is really interesting, but I'm not going to put my comments in there. I'm just going to read the energy in the chart. With Juno at the very end, showing humanitarian justice again for those who listened and obeyed his directives, as Juno obeyed Zeus, the god of the gods. Which is something he wanted to be all the way back here in the 5th in Aries with Varuna. Then last but never least, Libra energy quickly changes to Scorpio and Ophiuchian energy here in his 12th house, with Atropos, fate, 2 degrees from Antares, the energy of Archangel. Again, divine judgment, but it's for divine judgment and suffering to gain higher wisdom after successfully navigating the dark night of one's soul, the lowest and darkest, most difficult moments of our lives. Gates' North Node actually joins the party here, still in Scorpio energy, but influenced by the stars of Ophiuchus. Gates' sole purpose in this life is to learn how to rise above his darkest aspects, to let go of his obsession with material excess. And remember, Scorpio Ophiuchus is directly opposing Taurus. Then Pallas Athena ends Gates' 12th house just 2 degrees from his ascendant in what looks like very early Sagittarius on the astrology wheel. But in fact, Pallas Athena is actually in the late ascended higher stars of Ophiuchus, showing Gates will fight to the end to be portrayed as a good soul, fighting to help heal the cosmos. Now let's look at the interplay of these energies which have supported him and which have not throughout the years. The harshest aspects, the energetic blockages in Gates' chart, we have one grand square here you can see very clearly. It goes from Chiron here in the 2nd to his IC on the cusp of Pisces and Aries between the 4th and the 5th. And then it goes on up to Maki in Cancer in the 7th, and then to Neptune with Dejanira conjunction in Virgo at the end of the 10th. The tension within this grand square is made up of 2 opposing forces. This opposing force is creating a plow to this energy and this energy. And the second opposition is hindering the energy here and the energy here. If he doesn't learn to balance the opposing forces, these will be very difficult aspects for him to use constructively in his life. So let's look at them a little closer. The strongest oppositional force is this IC he has, opposing to what his most lasting public legacy, the Dejanira Neptune conjunction in Virgo at the end of the 10th. If these energies stay unbalanced, it will block a positive expression of Chiron in Capricorn in the 2nd. On the flip side, it's also causing a blockage to Maki Maki in Cancer in the 7th. And Maki Maki again is acting with wisdom from lessons learned from the past, one's past mistakes. The second opposition creating the square from Chiron in the 2nd and going across to Maki Maki in the 7th, together, these two oppositions create a crucifix. And yes, this will be the energies that will cause Gates the most suffering in his lifetime if he does not learn how to balance them in a way that makes them constructive and positive forces. Another strong plow is created by Fortuna in Taurus in the 5th, opposing Juno in the 11th in Libra. Together, this opposition, if it is not harmonized, is what is causing any kind of negative expression here with Haumea, Jupiter, and Pluto in Leo at the end of the 8th. If this remains unbalanced, it would show as an imbalance here, which could lead to an ill-fated destruction through the spotlight of his most intimate relations. Okay, enough of negative energies. Let us switch gears and look at what energies have been supporting him, have been harmonic all his life, and have always been there to support him along his journey. We see a supportive Grand Trine starting at his IC again, which is very interesting, going up to his 8th house, Leo, Haumea, Jupiter, Pluto, Regulus, stellium, to Pallas Athena on his ascendant in Sagittarius on the cusp, between the 12th and the 1st houses. So this is kind of interesting. This Grand Trine forms a very strong kite, which then points up here and directs the energy to the combined energies of Achilles near Cupido and Neptune, the Neptune-Dejanira conjunction in the 10th in Virgo, plus his midheaven on the 1st degree of his 11th, showing us that the blessings of this trine have been directed at the attainment for the highest expression of Bill Gates' 10th house, midheaven energy, which is also near his sun, which is what rocketed his career into the spotlight in terms of humanitarian endeavors that allowed people all over the world to communicate via computers. His most perfected skill, his service to the collective. Remember over here, right? There is a secondary, less powerful kite formed by the same trine, but it's going in another direction. It is pointing at his descendant in Gemini on the cusp of the 6th and 7th houses. Here we see that this trine was also helping Gates to develop these skills, right? To help others with communication, the giving and receiving of information. However, it also denotes a blessed one-on-one partnership that will help and support him, right? The descendant, that will help and support him in this endeavor at the start of his professional venture. This probably manifested in his late business partner, Paul Allen, right? Okay, now with all the propaganda and fake news stripped away, and with the universal forces that shaped and motivated Bill Gates throughout his life clearly defined, is Bill Gates saint or sinner? You decide. I'll be posting a saint or sinner video each week. This way you can compare and contrast personalities as you wish. So stay tuned for more natal chart interpretations of the famous and infamous. Until next time, I wish everyone a divinely guided day. Bye-bye for now. Bye-bye.